Welcome back. It's Krish here again. In last video, I gave a promise that I'm going to make 2 videos per week. I'm not sure about future, but in this week at least, I'm going to make that happen. So, if you're not subscribed yet, this is the right time to subscribe because there are a lot more to come, which is more interesting in future weeks. So, you're not going to miss any videos. Go ahead and subscribe right now, and also make sure you click the bell icon so that make give alert to you, notification to you, so you won't miss any videos. All right. So in last video we discussed about asynchronous tasks, right? So how to use a Spring task to deliver the real asynchronous services. I'm going to put that in the inside our real application in in a couple of weeks or couple of videos. So today I'm going to make other step. So service chaining. Service chaining is one of enterprise integration pattern, EIP. If you Google EIP, you can find enough number of enterprise integration patterns. Service chaining is one of that. For example, service chaining is something you invoke one service and you get the response, and you take one property of that response and use that call for a second service. There is a other one called scatter gather pattern. Scatter gather mean, like for example, let's say you're going to you're going to invoke airline ticketing API. You want to travel from Colombo to Los Angeles. Then you need to know how Qatar Airways quotation, what is the Emirates, and how is the Sri Lankan Airlines. You need to do you need to get all those information. So in that case, you can take that and send all those services at once parallelly to all the APIs, and you can get the response and you can merge it and send back. So scatter gather, you scatter it and you gather it. But this is a little bit different. So what we are going to do here is a service chaining. Chaining means you invoke one service, you get the response, and you extract a property and you use that and invoke a second service. That is service chaining, right? So from here onwards, we need to talk about service chaining, and then next video, service discovery and the load balancing and circuit breaker pattern and so on and so forth. So to help those entire course, I created kind of a few services, right? Because we came for 14 videos journey, right? I don't think I need to create every single thing in front of you. All those services, I didn't include anything we didn't discuss, right? Every single thing here we discuss. Okay, so if you come back to this, you can see, so you have a customer service, you have a rent service, and you have a model, and you have a vehicle service. Okay, let me little brief about this, right? Brief introduction. So what we are going to do is we are going to implement rent-a-car application, right? So we have in a rent-a-car domain, you have cars, you have customers, and you have a renting, and you have so many other objects. For this, we only use a car and customer, right? So you have a customer, you have a car, customer come and rent a vehicle. Okay, so now all those models we learn, we need to put into, I mean, it's not must, but it's okay, it's easy, you don't need to duplicate everywhere if you put something as a common model. So that is the what this rent cloud model project does. It's not a Spring project, it's just a Java project. We did this before, right? So we did this before. If you forget, I don't remember exactly, third or fourth video, we did the exact thing. The title was the first production ready service. Okay, go ahead and look at. So here I did something different. I put all those things, each services model into a separate package, right? So here's the thing. You remember, if you don't remember, there is other playlist called microservice theory videos, right? So in a microservices, it is better if you have one service, one database per service, right? So this is why it is important. Let's say we discuss in microservices, the basic fundamental is independently deployable, independently scalable. So let's say you have customer service and you have vehicle service as well, right? So let's assume you both write in the same database, right? For some reason, in some promotional thing, you need to increase your TPS is 10 times. Let's say you have 100 TPS now, you need to increase this by 10 times. Like now you get 1000 TPS. So now when you scale this service, Now all those 1000 TPS, let's say you are right now running 5 instances, you need to run 20 instances. All those 20 instances come and trying to write to same database. So same time when you scale the vehicle service, those services also come and write to the same database. Now you are scaling services, but in the database you're creating bottleneck, right? You understand that. So you're creating bottleneck. So your scaling the service doesn't affect much because you are using same database. So you always write on that database. So end of the day, you are creating a bottleneck on the database because you cannot maintain that throughput, you expected throughput. So if the customer service writing this one database and if the vehicle service writing one database, then no matter how much you scale this customer service, how many instances, like may 100,000, 10,000, doesn't matter because it has its own database. So you can scale the database along with the service because it does not affect vehicle service. So we use that principle here, right? If you go here, if you go back, if you go to MySQL database, I think I made it wrong. Okay, so you can see here. So you have Rent Cloud customer database, Rent Cloud rent database, Rent Cloud vehicle database, right? So you have 3 different databases for our 3 different services. Okay, so I hope you understand why we doing that. So now you have customer service, right? So customer service, if you go here, if you go to here property file, right? So you can see here, so we use one database called Rent Cloud customer, right? So if you go to vehicle service database, okay, if you go here main, so vehicle service database, it's using Rent Cloud vehicle database, right? Likewise the rent service use the rent database, right? So we have separate database. What I want you to pay your attention here, in the model we separated these classes, right? So these packages depend on your services, right? So this is the customer service, this is the rent service, this is the vehicle service. So now we discuss in every single service has to have its own database, right? But if the customer service creating a table for the rent service table, doesn't make sense. If the customer service creating a table which is belongs to a vehicle service, doesn't make any sense, right? So if you go back here, if you go to customer service, right? So if you use this database, okay, so if you use this database, so you can see here is only created those 2 tables, right? So those 2 tables belong to this customer package. How I did that, let's go here, right? So in this class, so you can see here entity scan, I added the package up to the customer. So we're restricting, right? So that doesn't mean the customer service cannot use a rent model class. It can use, but it does not treat that as an entity. It does not go and create tables for that, right? So if you read the property file, so you remember, so this will going to create all the tables when you put the DDL auto to create mode, right? So now I created some sample data, that's why I put that back to non-mod. But if you put the create mode, it will create the database, it will create some tables, right? But how we manage this particular service, only create the tables which belong to that service, even though that is in the same common model project, right, through the package and the entity scan restriction. Okay, so now here's my business case, right? So I have a vehicle service running and I have a customer service running. I can talk to vehicle service and register vehicle, get vehicles, all those things, and I can talk to customer service and register customers and get customers and all those things. And I have a rent service. What the rent service does is, you can select a customer and you can select a vehicle and put this together and create a rent transaction, right? So let's say customer Krish and vehicle Toyota Corolla, right? So Krish rented Toyota Corolla, right? So that goes with the rent service. Okay, so that's a use case what I'm going to do. But now where the service chaining happen, here's how it's work, right? So you talk to rent service and give the rent ID and take the particular rent, right? So remember, rent service, the customers not belongs to rent service. So rent service only keep in the customer ID. So now rent service talk to customer service, get the customer information, right? And rent service talk to vehicle service to get the vehicle information. So that is the service chaining part. That is the total project, right? Okay, so let's jump into here. Right, I'm going to push this everything as it is to GitHub, so you can go through the project and understand what I'm doing here. So if you go back to rent service, okay, so you go to controller, right? So here we can get the rent, right? So get rent, everything up to here is we did in the past videos. So here's my what I'm trying to do, right? So with the path variable, I'm going to take one more variable, right, here called let's say request param, right? So this is not required, okay? So it's a string variable and I'm going to get a type, right? So if the type is not there, we will only return the rent model back to the caller, right? If the caller says type is equal full, then we are going to return entire thing like with the rent and along with the customer and also the vehicle. Okay, so that's what we are going to do here. Okay, so to do that, I'm going to create a response model. Okay, so I'm going to create a package here. So I did not do that before to teach you something new. Okay, here's the thing. So now we have two use cases in this endpoint, right? One, user send just using the just endpoint. So in that case, we need to return just a rent object. So user send the parameter called type equal full or something like that. So in that case, we need to return rent as well as vehicle as well as customer. So it's a two different format in the response, right? I mean, you can use all those in a single response class, and if the user sending only the summary response, requesting only summary response, you can keep this customer and the vehicle is null, and also you can configure that don't return the null, and you can do all those things, right? But it's clear if you use two response classes. But the problem here, so this any method only return one type, right? So you cannot return two types, right? So two classes as a response. So for that you need to use two endpoints. So to avoid that, what I'm going to do here, I'm going to use a name interface. Okay, so what I'm going to do here, I'm going to create a interface called response, right? And I'm going to create other class called detail response. Okay, so detail response implements response. Okay, so response interface do not have any method. The whole purpose of this interface is a name interface, just to force a type, that's it, right? It doesn't have anything to do with it, right? So I'm going to create other class called summary simple response. Let's say simple response. Okay, simple response also implements response, right? I mean, yeah, it's arguable this is not a really name interface doing. Yeah, forget about that. So what I'm doing is here to make sure the simple response and detailed response is a response, right? Inheritance. So now what I'm going to do here, I go back to this class. I'm going to say, hey, my method is response, right? So now the detailed response come from implements response, and the simple response implement the response. That means simple response is a response and detailed response is a response, right? So it's a trick, right? It's a double OP. Okay, so now what I'm going to do here, if type is null, so I can do something here, right? So I can create a constructor. So here what we need is only rent, right? So only rent. Okay, so I'm not using anything here, but okay, I had to show that to you also. let me do this first. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to create a getters and setters for this, right? And also I'm going to create a default constructor along with this parameter. Okay, so that's easy. So now go back to detail response, right? So here I need rent object, and also I need a customer, and also I need a vehicle. Okay, so and here I am going to create getters and setters for all three, and also a constructor with using all these three. Okay, right. So now, okay, so what I want to show you is something else before I forget that. If you go back here in our model project, right? So if you take this particular let's say this one, right? So you can see here we use some annotation called date annotation, right? So this data annotation is come from this Lombok project. So what this does is you do not need to create getters and setters manually. You don't need to clutter your code. You can see, right? So these the model classes are so beautiful, right? So it just has only properties, right? So nothing else. Okay. So okay, so this giving me error saying convert a project into Java 8 because I'm using local date time. I can do that, and the rent. So this is very clear, right? So so let me do that first. Right, so now that is not there anymore. Okay, so this data annotation is create getters, setters, and constructors and everything its own, right? So you don't have to do clutter your code. But here, since I don't have that, so I created all those getters, setters, and the constructor, right? So what I'm going to do here, okay, so if I do not have this return, sorry, return new simple response, right? And this one, okay, return new simple response. Simple response is a response, so we can do this. Okay, but else I'm not going to check what is coming, like what is the text. If in the real case you need to check for the exact keyword full, but I'm going to let it come anything if this parameter is there, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new service method here called find detail response. Okay, that's not there, right? I'm going to create it. Okay, right. So what I'm going to do is here use the return. Okay, so I can generate this method, right? So this is not the response, this is a detail response. Okay, so this is detail response. So if I go back here again to my implementation, so the implementation will fail, right? So I need to generate the method here. Okay, so now I have this method, right? So detail response method. What this method does is, so it first create a rent type object, right? So and find by ID, and we pass the ID, right? So we first get the ID, right? So I'm avoiding all the null checks because I just want to prove something here, right? So not the real code. So you need to put all those null checks and everything when you do this, right? So and I'm going to use two methods to get customer, right? So public, yeah, those can be private methods, private. For this I need a REST template, right? So I'm going to use REST template. So I'm going to use the builder here and return. Okay, so now I can auto wire my REST template. I need to make this as a B, right? So now I can use that REST template here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a customer object, right, and equal REST template dot get for object, right? This is a get, so it's get for object. So right, I need my URL here, so I'm going to copy this from here. I'm going to get customer, right? So I'm going to get this URL, and I don't need this part. Instead of that, I'm going to concat this customer ID, and my type is customer.class. Okay, right. So, and I'm going to return this customer. You can write this in a single line, right? So that's fine. So same way, I'm going to use get vehicle. To show this with a, like that we can do that, like I'm going to return directly here. Keep in mind again, right, you need to add all those null checks and everything, right? So here, so now I'm going to create a detailed response object. So you can do something like this here, right? Customer equal new get customer, right? So what we need to do is we need to pass customer ID, right, and vehicle equal, so we need to get vehicle, right, so pass vehicle ID. Okay, and you need to return new detailed response. For this we need to pass rent, right, and customer and also vehicle. Okay, so that's done. Only thing is we need to change the URL here. Okay, this is a vehicle URL, right, so this one. Okay, and I'm going to use this here, and as usual I'm not going to use the ID. Okay, so cool. Only thing is I purposely avoid using authorization for this, because you don't have to like spend time to get a token and everything. Okay, so now if you come back here, right, so you can see it returned the fine detailed response, right? Okay, so now we're good. Okay, let's try to run this. So let's get the customer service first. So you run this, then let's run the okay, it says it's required 8 and target release. So you can do this with the POM file, but we can do this, there's other way to do it too. We'll see if this work. So what you can do is go to preferences and then build execution, and I think it's a compiler, Java compiler, yes. Okay, so here it says 1.5, so you need to set to Java 8, right? So okay, apply. Okay, so let's try to run again. I think it's worked. Okay, so now meantime I'm going to run vehicle service as well. Okay, and I'm going to run rent service. Okay, so now if you go here, customer service, so customer service, let's see which port it use. Okay, so customer service it didn't specify anything, so that means customer service should use on a port 8080. So I have this project as well. So this is Insomnia project. You can use a Postman without any issue. If you go here, fetch one customer, port 8080, right? So it's working, right? So port 8080, it's working. So now probably you can call this endpoint as well to get all customers. Okay, so only one customer registered, right? So if you go back to my vehicle service, we'll see what is the vehicle service port it use. So vehicle service use 9191, right? So if you go here, fetch vehicle, right? So 9191 number one, right? It's working. right? So now likewise it's working. So if you go back here to the rent service, right, so remember we have two ways to call this. First one without any other parameter, just a rent ID, right? So if you execute this, you will see here, okay, so you have just a single response which just only have a rent. But if you type can be anything, right? So this can be anything, right, because we didn't validate the text, right? So if you run this, now you can see it get the rent and it go to customer service and it get the customer information as well as it get the vehicle information, right? So you can see it go to the rent service first call the rent service rent object, and it extract the customer ID and send to the customer endpoint, and it extract the rent ID and extract the vehicle ID and send to the vehicle endpoint. So if you're not sure whether this is exactly how it works, you can it's sure, but we'll see to do to prove it. So here in the customer controller, right, so this is the endpoint we invoke from a rent service. So we can add some here request came on dot okay. So I'm adding some debug line, okay. So I'm going to add this same debug line to vehicle service as well, right. You don't have to do that, but just to prove that it's working. Okay, so vehicle service also has an endpoint where you only get the vehicle, okay, right, cool. So we need to restart this. So rent service, I'm going to restart, and customer service also I'm going to restart, okay. So I'm going to restart vehicle service and the customer service because we added this, right. So vehicle service, I'm going to clear this, right, and the customer service also done, we'll clear this, right. So go back here. So I'm going to use only this one, just a rent ID, right. It gives simple response, right. You can see it's nothing printed, either vehicle service or customer service. So now I'm going to use type equal full, right. I didn't validate to the full, right. So now it get the full response. So now you can see the request came on this time, right. So 29577, and if you go here, so sorry, if you go here, it did not hit that one, okay. We'll see why it did not came to vehicle controller, okay, but it clearly it comes here. Didn't we restart the vehicle service? Let's try one more time. Okay, so let's run this. Okay, you can see it's a request came, and customer service also request came, right. Maybe probably we didn't restart, right. So let's try one more time. Yeah, probably we didn't restart. Okay, so now it's clear, right, how this works. Okay, so let me to take you through code one more time. So the request comes here to our rent service, right. So we can hide these two, right. So we don't need this. So let me to close all these things, okay. And request comes here and hit to my rent controller, right. So when it hit to the rent controller, so this is, you don't need this one, so we can just close this one. Okay, so if the type is not there, it goes to simple response, right. So we use a trick here because we need to give the common response. You don't need to do this, you can use directly detailed response, and in that case when you get the simple response, the customer and the vehicle will be empty, but that's ugly, right. So user will see something, okay, I have a property but I don't get it, it's not pleasant experience, it's not good, right. So this way what we do is we have one response class to just a simple response and the detailed response, but in a method we only can do one type, we can return only one type. So what we did is we use the response as an interface to enforce the type, right, and it's just a name interface, it doesn't have any methods, right. So then we create a simple response and the detailed response to get it from inherit from response interface, right? Implement the response interface, right? So now if you go to the simple response, it only has the rent. So what it does is, so when you go to find by ID, right? So if you go to the implementation, so it just return the get one, right? So if you go to the get the detailed response, what it does is, right, it go to this one, right, and it get the customer, right, get customer. What it does is it go to the localhost 8080 and whatever the your endpoint and get the customer and get. So what you need to understand here, this is service chaining. How that works, you get the rent response first and extract the parameter from the response and extract the vehicle ID from the rent response, right? And then we invoke two other endpoints and build our response and send it back, right? So in the next video, what I'm going to show you is how to use a discovery mechanism, right? So in this case, like you can say, is a local host, the port, right? It's we hard coded this, right? So if you, let's say for example, from the customer service, it's going to scale for 10 instances, right? So in that case, you cannot put this hard code value here, right? So because we don't know which instance would free to go, right? So if it's a one instance, this is fine, but when you have multiple instances, you cannot do this. This is just a kind of a lock, right? So in the next video, what I'm going to show you is the replace this hard-coded URL and how to discover the available services from discovery service. Okay. So then I'll push this code and make sure you go through that and you do yourself and get familiar with it till we meet on the next video, and make sure you subscribe if you're not subscribed yet, and also go ahead and share this content with your audience. If you have a friends and if you think interesting, share on Facebook, share on a Twitter, share whatever the social media you are in. So in that case, we can take this content to many possible users. Then see you next time. Take care.